Hey everyone. So today I'm going to show you a little bit about the 3025, but I was hoping to actually show you the power, and I don't have the power comparison apparatus. It's over there on the 1 series. I was doing some tests on it, but ultimately I just barely got done with what I needed to do today. It's getting dark outside. I should go home pretty soon. So rather than start another project at 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with this video. I'll show you a few things, and hopefully I'll get to it tomorrow and you'll be able to see what kind of power this thing produces. Now, just a little bit of a recap if you haven't seen the previous videos, and I'll throw a little bit of extra stuff in. This engine is electronically governed and mechanically injected, which means that it's not really at all like this engine, which is a common rail diesel. And I do need to make a correction on something I said about this tractor, and it kind of affects the 3038, and it made me look stupid because I never even went and read the sticker that's on there. I put my faith in the John Deere website, which was completely wrong. And Tractor Data failed me, but I don't blame them because they probably got their stuff from the Deere site, which is where I would have gotten it from, apparently. But this is not the same displacement as this tractor, which I think I said before. Another thing I said is this is a different engine than the 3038E. It is not. It is the same engine, which makes complete sense. But that's not what the site said, so that's not what I told you. So sorry about that if I confused anybody. I had a couple YouTube comment helpers that got me straightened out on this, which I was a little bit skeptical, and I meant to actually go and look at what it said there, and I just never did and got tied up, and I can make lots of excuses. Ultimately, I was wrong. The right answer is 3038E, 2038E, and by the way, the 3039 and 3046, I think, also share this same engine. Don't quote. They share the same displacement. It's not the same engine because it's got different letters at the end, but it's the same kind of concept. It's a common rail, turbocharged, and in the 46's case, it's actually intercooled as well. So they're using some of the same engines, across for the most part. And so, but this does have less displacement than this. And if you believe, which I happen to, that there's no replacement for displacement, then possibly we can get more power out of this one than we can this one. Now, that's probably not technically true. It just depends on what we can ultimately do. But I think we can get more power out of this one than this one is right now, right? So, and, I don't think these engines are completely detuned. I think there is some opportunity to make them more powerful, but I also don't think that you're going to have a situation with the bore and stroke and kind of all the things that are put in here. It's a 1.5 something liter engine, even though a Honda Civic with a 1 liter engine's putting out, 300 horsepower probably. I don't know. I hadn't really kept up in a while. This one's not going to put out 300 horsepower without some really crazy modifications, and Gail Banks would probably have to pay us a visit at least once or twice. So ultimately, I do think that we'll be able to get good power out of this. Is it going to be anything that is, to write home about? I actually think it is if you compare the tractor to itself. We'll call it 13 horsepower at the PTO. If we were to double that, wow, that is huge for this tractor, but then you're at 26 horsepower, so, again, you're not really going to win any drag races with that if there were a PTO drag race. But anyhow, this engine is the same as the 3038E. I was wrong. One thing that was puzzling to me that I'm glad that I've figured this out or had help figuring this out is I was not actually able, even though I said I was, I think I went back and looked and I was like, oh wait, that's not what I thought I was seeing. The engine that would have been in here, which is, let's see, that doesn't have, I got to go back and look at this because I think the engine that's actually in the 3032, because the comment I made was 37 point whatever horsepower was what Yanmar claimed, but that was at 3,000 RPMs. Now I think, I got to go do my homework, that they were actually talking about a non-turbocharged engine, which is really, I don't know, when you try to cross-reference those with what Deere says and what Yanmar says is possible, it doesn't foot, but that doesn't mean there's not a good explanation for it. It just means something I don't know. But anyhow, before I get too long-winded here, let me show you something on this. Well, actually, let me show you our prototype here. So we've got a charge tube, no air intake, so we can just, dirt and rocks can go straight into this engine if it needs to, but hopefully that won't happen. We've got the turbo perched on a 1 series riser here, and it's reversed because in the other orientation, it was actually sticking out here a little too far, 1, and 2, the exhaust it wasn't a good fit, I don't think, for the exhaust. This seemed to be better. Again, I don't think that this riser will be the final riser that we use. I think we'll actually do something different. It won't be the whole manifold, but it'll probably be a riser. We'll have, obviously, a charge tube. We'll have exhaust. Our exhaust is going to exit on the other side in the same place as it did before, but that means it's got to go that way. I've just got it kicked out here because I didn't want it to blow soot all over this. And so this is where we are. Now, I have right now, and we're not going to run anything. I'm going to start the engine, but we're not going to run anything, and it's in the stock form. But right here, for those of you interested in the boost and exhaust temp gauge, is where I'm going to mount that. And let me show you. Do I have it close enough? Yes, here. I actually just got the parts yesterday. So this brass piece is going to actually go here. We'll have a spot for our wastegate that goes down to there, and then we'll have our sensor on the end. And that's going to be, I think, the most efficient place to put it. We won't have to cut any holes in any tubes. Probably won't have any issues with exhaust leak or boost leaks, but at least that makes it a little bit less likely, and we'll still be able to run our wastegate. Now, me personally, I have my wastegate hooked up, but there are times when I don't have my wastegate hooked up, and honestly, it's going to build a little more boost if you don't. I kind of prefer that. I've seen, 10 and 11 without the wastegate, and that's when I did the Kubota over there. I didn't have the wastegate hooked up, so if you have it hooked up, you're probably going to see 7 to 8 psi without the wastegate. If you close it off, probably 10, 11. But that said, this engine builds similar boost to those as well. And let's see here. Anything else I want to tell you? Well, what I want to show you is the cold start device, because I haven't had this tractor started at all today, and I thought this was a good opportunity to show you the kind of what happens, because you might have noticed this and not actually known that this tractor has a cold start device. And what a cold start device does is gives you a little bit of extra fuel, and it does affect the timing, but I have not got into what that actually is and how much, and whether that's something worth trying to tap into. But I've got a multimeter hooked up here, and you can see the electronics down here. They're going to be the HydrosPlus custom tuner electronics that's going to come with the turbo kit. I know that there are other tuners out there that I think will work on this engine. Hang on, let me make sure I keep my voltmeter on. But I can't rely on those. One, they're going to skyrocket the price. Not that they're not worth that. I'm not saying I don't actually know who makes them. I just know that they're out there. But if I have to pair that with the turbo and I have to get it secondhand, I'm not going to be able to control the price on it. I'm not going to be able to control whether they make them or if they were increase the price later. I need to have control over pretty much everything if I'm going to offer these kits for the prices that you're familiar with. Same thing goes for the 1 Series. There are a lot of parts that initially I started because I didn't know how many people might be interested. I started with off-the-shelf parts because, I didn't know if I was going to sell 1 of these or 5 of these or 500 of them. But if I was only going to sell 5, I was definitely not going to invest in making 500 pieces of something, which is kind of a it's not a minimum, but by the time you end up making a piece, kind of like the one here in my pocket that I showed you, I mean, it'll cost basically the same to make 5 of those as 500. So it just doesn't make sense for me to make those parts if I'm not going to sell very many of them. But it turns out a lot of people like turbos, myself included, and it does make sense. So now I have control of pretty much everything in that supply chain. I have multiple suppliers for it. So if for some reason I have a supplier go out of business or something like that happens, I'll be able to just pick up and keep going. And plus I keep those things in stock. I'll also use as many common parts as I can. You can see my drain hose here is the same one. You may or may not know what the one that looks like on the 1 Series, but it's the same one. So, you know, that it's actually really important to be able to control your supply chain, because then they'll have you over a barrel and I'll have customers that I need to support and I won't be able to support them. I actually learned that. There was like a COO at Ford who talked about it was some electronic device, and they were asking him the question, like, why, you know, Tesla just sends out a software update whenever something goes wrong or they find something. And he's like, you know, why can't you do that? And they were like, well, that it turns out that we are trying to get back to there, but because they use more of the traditional model where you bid everybody against each other, they get the lowest bidder, and you know you're trying to get down to the lowest cost so you can have the highest profits. Well, they didn't own any of the software. All the IP belonged to Bosch and all the, you know, Delco and their partners. And so when they said, hey, we need to tweak this code, number one, they actually wouldn't know what part of the code to tweak because they'd never seen it. But two, Bosch might say, no, that code is actually not just in your car, it's in, you know, all the GMs and all the Infinities and et cetera, et cetera. So, and they like how their code is, so we're not going to change it. So I haven't learned that completely the hard way. There was a few things that I ended up buying off the shelf that kind of burned me in that they were not exactly what they said they were, or they sent me the wrong ones, kind of like getting the wrong bolt in the wrong bin kind of thing. That caused some grief for some of my customers, but now I have a lot more control over that. So anyhow, it's getting late. Let me show you this cold start and kind of how it works. Now, this is a completely stock tractor at this point. There's electronics hooked up to it, but I've got them set to a stock form, which is really actually great, because if I want to go to stock on that tractor now, it's a little hit or miss, because I can turn the screw back to where I feel very confident that it is, but you know, I still might be off a quarter of a turn, which may not make a difference. But this one, I can truly go back to stock, which I like a lot. So when you go to start this tractor, and you might have heard this on your tractor before, but notice, let's see here. I got ground, I got connection. Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this up. Interesting. That well, I didn't get to show you anything. I guess, so the cold start device, it's actually been really warm here today, so I will have to show you. All this video, I was going to show you this cold start thing, but it isn't on because it's actually not cold enough. But when it is cold enough, you will hear, you'll see it rev up, and it'll have a distinct change whenever the cold start device goes off. And so that's what I was going to show you, but now I got nothing to show you. But let me actually start it up. We'll pull this off. We'll let you listen to the turbo. Now, one thing about this tractor, because it's electronically controlled, watch how much delay there is. Like when I push this up, you can literally go so fast that it doesn't do anything. But probably can't hear too much whirring. It's very similar to the 1 Series, which is not incredibly loud, but some people want their tractor to be quiet. Some people want it to be sound like a 6-liter diesel, which is I'm kind of on the latter side of that. But that's it. That's what I'll show you today because I couldn't show you the cool cold start thing. Just know what we're working on. Oh, let me just mention the delay here has everything to do with the electronic governor, and what it's doing is if it were to react as fast as I was reacting, it would blow a bunch of black smoke. It's got smarts inside that keeps control of the black smoke. So if you ever, if you're driving your 3025 and you push it up really fast and it feels like it's kind of slow to pick up, or especially if it's under load and it's slow to pick up, it's because of that. It's trying to keep the black smoke from coming out of the engine by doing it, revving it up a little bit slower. Well, that's it for this one. Maybe you learned something else about a 3025. You learned that I can't read a simple label or don't take the time to do it. But tomorrow or very soon, I promise to show you the power comparison apparatus on this. We'll run it stock again, and then we will run it with the turbo. So I have to pull the turbo with the charge tube off, and then we'll hook the turbo up, and then we'll add some electronic goodness to the eco governor and tell it to be a little more aggressive, and we'll see what we get. Questions, comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching.